All right, let's dive in to some races this weekend. Matt, you're here to talk about the 3 Del Mar stakes. It starts off with the Shared Belief listed stake. It goes as race number 2 and obviously takes on all manner of outsized importance this year because of the late Kentucky Derby. No grade next to the number here, but in terms of intrigue of races I want to see this weekend, this one is very much near the top. We've got the return to the races of Honor AP, and then these 2 very interesting Baffert runners as well. How do you see this one? Where are you going to go in this year's Shared Belief?
Yeah, kind of to piggybacking on the idea that there is that added level of importance because it is a Derby prep and there are points on the line. I'm going to be very stunned if Honor AP doesn't win the race, because I think many people have pegged him as one of the top 2 or 3 3-year-olds of the crop this year, myself included. I think what he's done on the racetrack has been fantastic. He was flattered by Authentic, regardless of what you overall think of the performance from Authentic and the Haskell. He still went out and won a Grade 1 race with, I believe, a 100 buyer. So it's not like he ran slow. I just look at this horse and say, I find it a little bit interesting the path that the connections are taking to the Derby. And I'm not suggesting that it's going to work against them, but I've always felt like longer is going to be better for this horse. And he won't have an opportunity to go 10 furlongs until that first Saturday in September, which to me is a little bit interesting because you had other opportunities. If you wanted to ship him to Saratoga, you could have done that for next week's Travers. There are other races that perhaps you could have got a little bit of extra ground out of that they're not necessarily utilizing. They'd rather play the home game. So, from a foundation standpoint, do I think it's going to be the end of the world for him in Louisville? No, I don't. But I do think it is, it's kind of that elephant in the room. It's one of those things where in a typical Triple Crown campaign leading into the Derby, we understand that there's no real opportunity to try to go that sort of distance. I know the Louisiana Derby now is 1 mile and 3/16. UAE Derby is 1 mile and 3/16. But at least this year, if you really wanted to, you had an opportunity to go out to 1.25 miles before the Kentucky Derby to find out if it would work. These connections are choosing not to. I have no reason to go against the horse. I have to be honest, of the 2 Bafferts, I don't really like either of them. I'm curious what your thoughts are. I've never really been blown away by Thousand Words. I think he's a fine horse. I don't think he's a superstar by any stretch. I think he's a cut below, if I'm being honest. And Cezanne, I don't know what to make of him, honestly, at this point. I thought the debut was solid. I was far from blown away in the run at Los Al going 2 turns, but then I always kind of keep that caveat in the back of my mind. Some horses take to Los Al and some don't. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on the Baffert horses, but for me, it's Honor AP.
I definitely get the Honor AP love, and I share it. What is the story with Uncle Chuck in this spot, Matt? Are they? I know they had talked about shipping east next week, and then I saw he was entered here. Is he going to be coming to the party from what we know?
He is going, as far as I know, and I've read that they're going to scratch from this spot. This was nothing more than a backup sort of situation in case there was an issue. He's going to go to Saratoga for the Travers at 1.25 miles. And, not to go too far down the road, I think he's a legitimate threat to Tiz the Law. I really do. I think this is a horse who I was very dubious when I heard Mike Smith after the career debut say he reminded him of Arrogate. I thought that was a little bit aggressive. I watched that Los Al race. He ran it like a turf horse. He gets final 1/8 of a mile in 11-4 in a dirt race. That's not normal. And he galloped out about another 1/2 mile very, very easily. I think he's still a little bit green, but I think it speaks volumes that they're going to send him out east to take on a horse like Tiz the Law in his 3rd lifetime start.
It's going to be fascinating to see, because he obviously in here would have been, I still might have liked Honor AP, but that dynamic would have been very, very interesting. My gut is that the 2 Bafferts in here are they're just too far behind the level of form of what I've seen from an Honor AP. And I don't take it as a negative at all, the not shipping and going for the tougher test earlier, just because of the hands that Honor AP is in. We saw this with John Sheriff's conservative, some might have said to a fault, with Zenyatta. But what he showed with Zenyatta also is the ability to play these home games and find maybe some of these softer spots to get one ginormous, difficult race against, in her case, those Breeders' Cup Classics against the boys. But I think that he's very good at maybe finding some easier spots and then having the horse be able to peak in the exact moment that he's looking for the horse to peak. I think that's going to be the case with Honor AP. I'm still team Tiz the Law in the big picture of life for the Derby, but I do expect Honor AP to win here and go there as a strong second choice. So you buying that idea?
Yeah, I feel like he's, like you say, I can see. I probably would still side with Tiz the Law in a race like the Travers with Honor AP. If I'm probably going to be more inclined to try to bet a horse like Uncle Chuck in the Travers, but I still think at this point, just based on seasoning and what he's accomplished throughout his career, I mean, Tiz the Law to me is the leader at this point, and you need to go and beat him as opposed to have one of these other horses do something else. So I agree. I think Honor AP right now, as far as the pecking order is concerned, I would put him 2 behind Tiz the Law, and then we'll see what happens next weekend with Uncle Chuck. Do you have any opinion on either of these Baffords in here about maybe not even necessarily this race, but long term? I mean, am I just selling them too short at this point?
I feel like 1,000 Words is pretty exposed. We know how good he is. Cezanne is interesting just because he's progressive and looks like a horse for whom more ground will be the friend. So I'm hoping that he doesn't get too rushed and he's able to sort of continue to progress a little bit more naturally, where maybe there's a big target for him a little bit later in the year. I do feel like this has the potential to be a little sharp still against a monster like Honor AP, and I don't know. My gut just tells me he's not going to put it together in time for the Derby. Maybe things I see in this race and in workouts subsequently will reverse my thinking about Cezanne. I'm really interested to see him run, but I feel like today he'd be a surprise. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way that I'm looking at it, and I wonder if he's potentially a beneficiary of this sort of jacked up schedule where maybe all of a sudden he becomes a Preakness horse, where, you get many of those horses coming from the Derby. I still maintain if you have the really good horses exiting the Derby and they don't win, I don't think they're going to run in the Preakness. I really don't. I think they're going to wait for the Breeders' Cup Classic at that point. There's just so much more money involved. And perhaps with a horse like Cezanne, who maybe you don't get to the Derby, maybe all of a sudden your Breeders' Cup de facto becomes the Preakness and you take a shot there.